This is Stronger Than My Father with Marcus Menace.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Stronger Than My Father podcast. I am your host, Marcus Menace Sr. Stronger Than My Father podcast is your most trusted podcast that's centered around restoring fatherhood. Hey, I have to thank my producer, Jim McCarthy, for all the work he does to make this podcast work. And if you're in need of a podcast producer or voiceover work, reach out to my good friend, Jim McCarthy at jmvos.com. And lastly, I'd like to shout out my oldest son, Marcus Jr., for helping his dad set up all this work and work as my assistant with each guest. So I'd like to thank my oldest son because he always want me to give him a shout out his name, Marcus Menace Jr. So let's go to work. Hey, my guest is an inspiration. Let me say that. He's an inspiration to me. And I'm older than you. But you inspired me because this is the first podcast that I'm going to do that's dealing with mental health issues. And this young man wrote a great book called PTSD, Perseverance Through Severe Dysfunction. I would like to welcome my guest, Mr. Reggie Ford. Welcome.
Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate that.
So I'm going to figure out how to get through this because your story is amazing. And I don't want to tell all of it because I want people to buy your book. So I'm going to show this book all day. Best book in America, man.
Oh,
this is a good book.
Thank you.
First of all, with your story, you talked in your book. You talked about growing up in the inner city. Your mom was young when she had you. Just from your experience and what you went through, what was driving forces to help you mentally say, you know what, I'm in the hood. I don't want to live this life. Kind of like Coach Carter movie.
Yeah.
When he says, hey, you know, everybody has a chance to get out the hood. For you growing up and seeing the things that you saw, what was one of your driving forces? Because I'm trying not to give your whole book away.
No, you can't. I don't think you can.
I can't. It's too much.
Yeah, it's too much for it.
But for you as a young man, what made you decide that I don't want to be in poverty? I don't want to go through these things and become the man you are today?
That's a great question. And first, I want to just say thank you for this opportunity to be on the show.
I feel like I'm with a celebrity, man.
Nah, I'm with a celebrity.
No.
I got major respect for you, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I want to shout out MJ. MJ invited me in. He was so respectable and so he showed me around. He told me about his girlfriend. He told me it all. So he said he's gonna be driving next year too. So look out, world.
Oh wow! I don't know about that one.
Shout out to MJ.
Thank you.
But yeah. So I think one of the driving forces for me throughout my entire life was I learned from what I perceived as mistakes from other people.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to repeat those things. Mm-hmm. And so early on, there were a couple of things that were my driving forces. One, I had to graduate from high school. Mm-hmm. That was something that a goal that I set for myself was like graduate from high school. Don't have a child before you're 14 because my mom had me when she was 14, and then don't go to prison. And so those were my three goals throughout my entire childhood that really propelled me because I perceived those as mistakes from the generation before me. Of course, they had situations and circumstances that shaped why their reality became what it was. But that's what I saw as contributing to the pain that I felt, the pain of poverty, the pain of hunger, the pain of not knowing if I'm going to be safe. And I felt if I did those three things, then I would, be in a different place in life. And so that was early on my three driving forces, to be honest.
Well, that's cool then, because I know in your book you talked about going to NBA, facing racism. And I would think back in the 2000s, racism would be kind of, not as much. So when you started talking about that, I'm thinking about, if I put my boy, if we go to schools that are predominantly white, is he going to face racism? Was that an introduction to you? Did you get pre-talks about racism before you walked into that environment? Or that's something that was like somebody poured a cold bucket of water on you and you were like, wow, this is racism.
Yeah.
So if you can give me some information about how that experience, or you realizing that, I'm dealing with racism.
Definitely. So transitioning from public school, being in a predominantly black, most of the students having a similar experience that I had, to being in a predominantly white private school where a lot of people were wealthy, coming from good families and things like that. It was the biggest culture shock that I ever had in my life. and I was just 5 miles away from my house, maybe.
Hey.
And when I look at that, it's like I didn't have the preparation for it.
Okay.
I didn't have the biggest concern that the school had for me was academically. Is he going to be able to adjust to the rigor of the curriculum? But that wasn't the hard part for me. The hard part was waking up every day and getting to school and putting on this mask and feeling like I had to present myself as a different type of person, and then going home back to the hood every day. That was the hard part, because there were so many things about culture and society that it was just brand new to me.
Yeah.
And so when it came to when it came to experiencing racism, I think we experience systemic racism every day.
Yeah.
When we look at the systems and how they are. But when it comes to overt personal racism, that was something I never experienced much in the hood. Like, because you're around similar
Black people all the time.
We don't experience that. And so to even like be called the N-word by a white person in a derogatory way was something I had never heard.
Yeah.
And so it was a big challenge to manage those emotions when those things came up, because again I was very aware and self-aware at the time as a child, and I didn't want to be perceived as the stereotype. Yeah. Even though I'm fitting a lot of the stereotype, right? I'm the kid from the hood with a single mother, teenage mother, with the dad in prison. I'm fitting the stereotype, but I'm not going to show you the stereotype. And so that took even more restraint to be like, you say, boy, this and that. And I'm like, I'm gonna keep my head down. Like it's gonna be a time I'm gonna get mine back. And a lot of the students play football, and so when I need to, I'm gonna come at you. I'm gonna
lay that hat on you.
Come at you. And so that'll be the time where, in a controlled setting, like I'm gonna let you feel it. But it took a lot of restraint to not respond in the way that I think a lot of people would have expected me to respond. Yeah,
because I think you had a mindset of like, I want to do better, and what I was amazed is that you found a way, because you were one of a million. I don't even say like a million that makes it out, that says, I want to do better. I don't want to be in that same environment. So I probably went a question ahead of time. You talked about you did backfill motion.
Yeah,
so shout out to my boy Todd Campbell,
shout
man.
Out.
That's my guy. He's the one to keep me in line. So when I'm ready to go off, they say call Todd.
Yes, okay.
Somebody actually told Todd to call Marcus.
Yeah.
He's gonna blow it, so I need you to talk to him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I go off.
Yeah.
I go off. So
okay.
It's like I was in this all these guys and talking about mentorship and stuff, and I just went off. I was like, dude's wasting my time. I'm going off. And the Todd was like right there. And somebody said, Todd, reach out to Marcus. You need to talk to him.
Yeah.
So Todd told me about when to go off, when to do this, when to do that, because I'm wired all the time.
Right.
I'm wired all the time. And because I take my work so serious. I take the work of mentorship serious. So when I see people playing around and you hustling folks, you angry at me. And I'm going to go off on you.
Yeah.
So when I think if you care more about being popular on social media than caring about a boy who don't have a daddy, then I'm going to go off.
Yeah.
That's me. But this is your time. So let me ask you this. What clicked in your mind to say, I know you said through backfill motion that got you to NBA. I mean, what makes a kid from hood says, I want to go to Montgomery Bell Academy, man? I ain't figured that part out yet, man.
Yeah.
Instead of just going to a normal high school.
Yeah. When I look back at it, I didn't truly know what I was getting into.
Okay. I
didn't know what that opportunity was going to look like. I didn't know what that life was going to look like stepping in that NBA. And so I remember it was just an opportunity. It was an opportunity. It was experience. It was exposure that not many people got. And I guess in my head thinking, I have worked hard for all of the opportunities that I'm getting, and so I should walk into it. I should step into it. And so when Justin Elliott, shout out to Justin, he brought me to a football game, and I'm watching, and I'm like, I'm gonna be out here one day.
Yeah.
And I got a pamphlet or the booklet that had the team on it, had all the information about the team. I got that and I stuck it in the binder of my binder, and I looked at that every single day, and I'm like, I'm gonna be on the cover of this one day. And it wasn't because I knew what NBA was gonna offer. It wasn't because I wanted the educate. It was like it was a new opportunity. It was a new goals, new exposure that I felt I had worked hard for. And that's when I set my mind on it. It was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna keep this here. I got to keep my grades up. I got to make sure my behavior is right. I can't let anything jeopardize this opportunity because public school is there for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's the default. It's there. This may not always be there. And I know thousands and thousands across the country, millions of students who don't get this opportunity.
Yeah.
So even if I don't like this, I can come back to the default, but let me pursue this opportunity and give it my best shot.
Okay.
So yeah.
You did it, man, because from there, you and I was like, I'm reading it, when I'm listening to the story, I'm like, guy went to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
I wasn't smart enough to go to no Vanderbilt. But just a little bit, what made you I know in the book why you decided to go there, but what clicked in your head to say, I want to go to Vanderbilt? Not, because Vanderbilt, you got to have certain grades, certain, SAT or ACT scores to get in.
Yeah.
But what clicked in your head to say, I want to go to Vanderbilt?
You know what I'm gathering from some of these questions is I think as we get older and as we learn more about the world, some of the fear starts to set in.
Okay.
And we recognize limitations that we may have as humans. I was the first generation doing all of this. And so I was very naive. And I'm thinking the world is my oyster. I don't have any of those limitations on me.
Oh, wow.
And so Vanderbilt, Harvard, Yale, like they're all knocking at my door. It was like I had to choose which one I wanted to go to. And I'll say the limiting belief for me was that I didn't belong at Harvard. Even though they're sending me letters, they want me to come to Harvard. I thought little old me from the hood doesn't belong in Harvard. Vanderbilt didn't seem like that to me, and Vanderbilt was in my backyard. And so when I was 10 years old, I had the opportunity to play in the All-Star game my first year playing for Backfield in Motion. That game was played at Vanderbilt Stadium. And I remember meeting players. I remember touring the facilities and everything. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm playing here. I'm coming here, and I'm going to play here. And fast forward, I'm sitting there as a junior, senior, and I really don't want to go to Harvard. That was the thing. That was the big push. It was teachers, coaches, head of school, everybody sitting me down. The first time I ever had wine was at a dinner as a 18-year-old, and they're like, here's a big ass steak, and here's all of this, and you're going to Harvard. I'm like, no, the fuck I'm not. I'm not. I don't want that. You don't know what I want. Yeah. And the thing for me was because this is stronger than my father. One thing that was important for me was I had very young siblings at the time. Yeah. And we didn't have our fathers. Like, we have different dads, and none of the dads were in the picture. Yeah. And I was big bro to all these younger siblings, and I'm like, I can't go away and be this figment of what a brother is, and whoever that man is out there, he's doing his thing. I didn't want that. I wanted to be in their lives, and I wanted to be in Nashville for that reason. And so that's when I was like, Vanderbilt is the spot for me. And some of the self-sabotaging behavior that I did around not going to Harvard, I had to correct some of that just to, get back on track. Who
was pushing you to go to Harvard? People MBA or who was pushing? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like my family wasn't pushing me to go to school or anything like that. Again, it's all new. Like they didn't know anything about that. But teachers and coaches and like that was a big part of it. Like what it would look like with my story. Yeah. From the hood to Harvard, from this school. Look what our school did for this kid. Right, and it would have been a great story, but it wasn't the story I wanted to tell. I wanted to tell PTSD in 2021. So,
Well, I want to get into more. This first podcast for mental health. Why do you think trauma affects people's mental health a whole lot? So when you hear the word a lot more now. This child has mental health. I used to think they were just crazy. But now through your book and through I did a lot of research before you got here on just how the mind works, and that sometimes a trauma event can severely damage a person. So if my kids see me beating my wife, that's gonna get trauma. That's gonna be traumatic to them because they like leave mom alone, leave mom alone. And my wife, and I was talking to her about this yesterday. She said I've dealt with trauma. And your book is the first time I ever heard the word trauma in a sense of like, darn. So when people go through this trauma, they act a certain way. And so I'm like, but where's the daddy piece to protect? Can the daddy protect you from trauma? I just don't know. But to my audience, can you give more of a sense why trauma affects people's mental health?
Absolutely. And I want to say, like, the word crazy is one that I try to stay away from, because it doesn't add to any positive nature of affecting the mental health. It only helps to to increase the stigma around mental health. And so when I look at it, trauma affects the brain, because our brains, especially as we're developing, we are making sense of the world. We think about a baby, brand new to this world. Every experience is new. And so if the experience is, I have needs, I need my diaper changed, I need food, I need water, I need protection, I need love, I need eye contact, and I don't get those needs met, that is traumatic for that developing baby. And so what does that then do to the brain? The brain starts to associate me having needs, they don't get met. What do I have to do now to survive? I have to meet those needs myself, or they just don't get met. And so then that's when you start to turn inward and say, I'm going to either stop crying because my crying doesn't do anything. So if you see a baby who's not crying, it's usually a sign that baby has been through some trauma, right? You think about infants who don't cry. Babies are supposed to cry. That's their alert signal to say, hey, I need something. But if they, in their short life, have been conditioned to not crying because their needs don't get met, and they're going to soothe themselves in another way, that continues throughout life, right? So now you're 5 years old and you really need a hug because something happened to you at school, but you don't know how to ask for it because you've been conditioned not to ask for anything because the needs don't get met. You then internalize, I got to do all this by myself. And you end up as a 30-year-old business person who is very, successful, but has to do everything by themselves. And so it shows up in our lives as personality. We say that's just how we are. But really, if you get to the root of why we are the way we are, it is associated to a lot of how we were developed as a child and what that conditioning did to us. And so think of, conversely, if all your needs are met as a child and you are nurtured and you are secure in your connection with your caregivers, then your outlook and expectations and conditioning on life is totally different. You can ask for help because you expect that person is going to give you help. And even if they say no, if they don't provide what you need, it's not the end of the world, because you have another concept in mind of what help and need looks like. And so I can go to another person and be like, he may help. And so you don't have these blocks in your life. And I say, for anybody who if you have blocks in your life, start to unravel that and see where that may come from, because chances are it comes from some things that happened during your development as a child.
Now, for relationships, I know you married and you talked about that in your book. How does marriage work if one of the either the man or the woman has been through trauma? How does that work? How can a person like me who I don't think I've been through anything traumatic with my parents, and then my wife who grew up without a father. So hey, I seen my mother get knocked down a flight of steps. How do people make that work in a marriage? And just in your opinion.
Yep. And I'll say marriages are man, woman, 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 man, man. There are many different ways of forming a unity that way. But I think, one, you get to a place of finding safety and security in another person to even take that step toward marriage. Okay. Which I think is a good sign, a healthy sign, in many cases, because for me, I've experienced 10 ACEs, and ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. And those adverse childhood experiences are negative things that happen before you were 18 that affect that affect your life, physical health, mental health, even your social health. How do you interact with different people? And so if you look at my ACE score, it's going to tell you that I'm going to die by heart disease early. I may have lung disease, die 20 years earlier because of the trauma that I faced when I was a kid. And it's also going to say that I'm going to be very terrible at holding relationships and being committed to those relationships. And for a lot of my life, that was the case. Yeah. Because I was the stories that would go on in my head were related to past traumas of bonds with people that were broken in ways that weren't safe and secure for me. And so finding someone, at least one person that starts to challenge that concept of what love is, started to break down, okay, well, I may not be able to trust 99.9% of the people in the world, but I can trust this one person. And I think that is where you get down on a knee and say, I want to marry you. Will you marry me? And so, but in that situation, you got two people coming from two different places. Yeah. It takes understanding. It takes patience. It takes love for the other party or, the other party who hasn't experienced those things to be like, I empathize with you. I have compassion for you. I don't understand why you think the way that you think, but there's a reason for that. And I want to be a safe place for you to explore that. Yeah. And that's what I got. That's what I received from my wife. And I think that is what is needed on both sides of it. It's like, I don't know and understand your experience, but I want to understand. So help me to understand by communicating with me. I'm going to sit here and be patient with it. I don't always have the answers. I rarely have the answers. And it's not about the answers, but it's about being there, because a lot of times our trauma and our fears are the rejection, the abandonment, the neglect. And all I need from you is to be there consistently and showing up with the same unconditional love. And that starts to reverse those conditioning patterns.
Well, you open my eyes to, I ain't gonna never say it on air. I can't think of one trauma experience I've been through. I ain't gonna never say it on air. I'll tell you.
Why you say never?
Because the person's on my Facebook page, they may hear it.
That's okay.
And I don't want that person to, I don't want to seem vulnerable as a man.
Ooh.
Vulnerable as a man in this situation. But the reason why I struggle with the word love, let me tell you that I struggle with the word love. My father wasn't an affectionate guy growing up. He wasn't. He was a worker. He showed his love through work and through providing. That's how my dad showed his love. I didn't hug my father a lot. That stuff never bothered me. I think what affected me was when I had my first heartbreak at 18. I really loved. And when I had that heartbreak, my dad told me, this. He said, never get too close to a woman where if she leave you, you do something stupid. And then he even told me, he says, even your wife, when you get married, don't get so close. Wow. Because if she leaves you, I don't want you to do nothing stupid. Wow. So for years, I was never close to my wife. I just got married because my mom was like, you can't keep going out here running through women. We didn't train you that way. So Toya was the closest person to me that really didn't do anything to really upset me. We just argued. And I growing up in a house that we didn't hardly see argument in a house. So when I argue with somebody else, that's a trigger. Even now it's a trigger. So I'm not going to argue with you. Yeah. You can get mad. I'm just going to look at you or I don't talk to you. Right. If I know that I'm going to have an argument with you, it's best for me not to say nothing, because I'm going to say something I can't take back or I may physically hurt you. But I need you away from me. And that's the reason why I appreciate my wife's patience with me, because I'm not a big affectionate guy. When it's time to have sex and be intimate, I'm probably affectionate then. After that, my mind goes to work, hustle, whatever I got to do. So I do understand that part now. And your book opened my eyes to that. Yeah. Your book opened my eyes to that. Yeah. But one thing, I'm going to give one snippet of your book that really opened my eyes was that letter you wrote. And I was like, that what broke me down. Now, if you want to break the big man down, that got me. Yeah. And I want to know, why did you write that letter? Because that was the most powerful letter that I've ever heard. Because I'm listening to a child trying to be prepared, because I thought about that with my oldest son. Yeah. Yeah. To my oldest son, and my wife hates me saying it, he's autistic. And
she hates you saying it?
Yeah, she hates me saying it because she don't want people to feel sorry for him. He wants to be
a superpower. Yeah, it's a superpower.
He wants to be normal MJ. That's like what you saw when he come out talking about his girlfriend, talking about this. He wants to be the normal kid. But as a father, why I didn't have my second one to 6 years later? I didn't want my second son. I didn't know what was going to happen to him. And so that's why I waited 6.5 years. Cause then my wife just said, look, we having one more child. And so for people who's listening, and that was probably the most powerful thing from a person who does not have any children. Cause I would have wrote that to my son. I'm gonna protect you.
Yeah.
I can't give you everything. But what made you write that?
Can I go back a little bit and
Sure,
talk about
you can. This is your show, man.
You said kind of the advice you got from your dad.
Yeah.
Of don't get too close to a woman because if you lose them, you don't want to do anything stupid to yourself. Yeah. And think about that conditioning, right? That story versus I'm going to empower you with all the things that you need to deal with if someone loses you. You have enough within you to handle a breakup that you're not going to do anything, instead of saying don't get close to a woman. Like, get close to people, but know you are worthy. Know you are enough. So if that does happen, you're okay. Yeah. Those are two different messages. Yeah. And so those are two different conditionings. And so like different things like that along the way are what shape our personality, what shape the way that we think about ourselves, what shape the way that we think about life. And that's what I talk about when we talk about mental health, when we talk about conditioning and things like that. But man, that's that letter. That letter is a letter to my unborn child. Yeah. And I still don't have any children, but the book is about intergenerational trauma. And it talks about generations above me, being my parents, my grandparents, and what shaped their lives, what traumas shaped their lives, and how that trauma is passed down through generations. And not only, and I've learned this since writing the book, but passed down, from, the same types of traumas that happen to you then end up happening to that next generation because of the lack of awareness and lack of corrective behavior. But it also passes down through our genes and through epigenetics and all of that. And so it felt incomplete with stopping with me if we're talking about intergenerational trauma. Yeah. And so I had to go to the next generation. And the letter to my unborn child was my addressing that next generation. And it's a letter I still cry to when I read it.
Well, that was probably the most moving letter. That got the big guy. Yeah. That got the big guy. I'm not going in front, dude. Yeah. A couple of tears came down my eye. Yeah. Because I'm like, I want to protect my son. Yeah. Especially MJ. And I know that he's going to face a world that he's going to be discriminated against. You talked about that in your book. Yeah. He's going to have to deal with being a black man in America. And will the cops understand that he has a condition? Or am I going to get a phone call that my son is gone because of somebody not understanding him? Right. So that's why the letter got to me, and it hit me too hard. Yeah. And I said, when I see Reggie, I'm gonna kill him because he got me. He had me crying. Yeah. Do your book. You talked about your relationship with your mom and your dad. With the situations that you went through, you had an off and on relationship with your mother. How did you keep going back as a child when you talked about one situation when your grandmother passed, you called your mama? Yeah. Like, if you having a tough relationship with her, why was that your first instinct to say, I'm going to call my mom?
Yeah, man. You going to get me now.
I ain't going to try to get you crying, man. I just want to understand.
That's the realness of it. And
what made you go to her? Yeah. Because I'm thinking if you having a tumultuous relationship. Absolutely. I hope I'm saying that word right. Yeah. So who goes back and call on the instinct like that?
So I want to point out something. I wear these beads that I got after I graduated from yoga teacher training. So I'm a certified yoga instructor, and these beads were infused with some of the themes that kept coming up for me throughout the training, which were unconditional love and grace. And so whenever I talk about anything, really, I like to tell people that I'm coming from a place of unconditional love and grace. Whether it feels like criticism, whether it feels like something negative, it's coming from a place of unconditional love and grace. And so I just wanted to state that. But that the parts about wanting to go back to my mom, I think that is something that is deeply innate in human beings. And probably all mammals is to have that connection with their mother, to have a nurturing connection with their mother. And when I look back at my life, the nurturing connection to my mom hasn't been there. But that has been part of the trauma that has fueled me to do the things that I do. For so much of my life, achievements and being perfectionist and all of these different things were a subconscious plea to my mom saying, hey, love me. That's what it was. Even to my dad, right? My dad's in prison. You left. Hey, come back. Love me. All the things that I've been doing to write books before I was 30, to be, nominated for Forbes 30 under 30, top 40 under 40, like all of those things, the accomplishments that came from starting businesses and things like that came from a plea to my parents, love me. And so, again, innately in us as human beings is that connection to mom. And so I wanted the nurturing. I grieve it every single day, the nurturing that I didn't get as a child, the nurturing that I don't get today from my parents. And so in those most vulnerable moments, it's just pure honesty. I remember like leaving the hospital and I'm bawling. My wife's driving. I hadn't talked to my mom in months. And I was like, I just want to go see my mama. And so it's one of those things. Like I think it's a human thing. Humans want to be connected to mom. And
so no matter how much you went through and stuff like that, you was just like, for a moment you put that aside. Oh yeah, because I needed something. Yeah, that the other stuff gonna have to wait. Yeah, yeah. And I just need a hug or
you realize that things are bigger than whatever it is that separated you or whatever. Yeah. And I think another thing that play is trauma bonds.
Oh, right? Wow.
And trauma bond is often misconstrued as we experience this trauma together, so we're bonded that way. That is not the true definition of trauma bond. Trauma bond is you're my abuser and I'm bonded to you, right? I am bonded to you because of some psychological imbalance that makes me feel that even the chaos that you bring to me is safety because it's predictable. You beat my ass every single day, but I can predict that, and prediction is safety. And so I'm bonded to that because when I go over here and I see blue skies and nice yards, I'm skeptical of that. I don't know what's going to happen with that. So let me go back over here to chaos. That's why when you see people in abusive relationships, you're like, why she keep going back?
I always ask that question.
Because she can expect that. She knows what to predict. And that prediction is safety. And so it's not about blaming that person because that is their brain doing what their brain knows what to do to survive. If I leave and things start to look different, I don't know if I'm going to survive. That's happening on a subconscious level. But consciously we say, I got to be here. And so that's what it was. It was a lot of knowing that I had to be there.
Because I could not, when I was listening to your book, I just couldn't believe when the things you said in the book, your mom said to you and stuff like that. And I'm like, how did he go back? And I think now you've opened my eyes to that. And even with your father, that's probably only part of the book where I balled my fist. Yeah. I balled my fist up. I was like, all right, Reggie, let's go get him. That's how I was feeling in the book. But every man wants to bond with his father. Even when you were saying the things that he went through and the things that he was going through, you still was trying to find a way to say, Dad, I need to connect with you and all those things. What helped you? My question would be like, why? Why not just move off from him if he wants to do X, Y, and Z? Because I'm not giving your book away. They're going to have to go buy and read this because this story is excellent. Is why you kept trying to pursue that, to try to have some kind of connection with your dad.
I think it goes back to just being innately attached to the caregivers that put you into this world. I think there is so much of the connection that like this is I came from you, I look like you, I sound like you, my mannerism, like all of that, right? That is a part of me that I want to have in my life. And as a child, I grieved it because it was like I could not have that. Because the prison system took him away, right? If I wanted to see him, I may get to see him on a weekend every several months. I don't know. And so as a free man, him being a free man and me being an adult, we have that opportunity every single day to be in each other's lives. And so I wanted that. That's what I wanted. I grieved that for so long. I want that, and we're going to have that. And so that is what it was. And we had, I mean, like I just did a podcast with my aunt, and she, my dad's sister, and she's like, I just know how close y'all were. And I'm giving a little bit of it away, but how close y'all were. And we were best friends. Like if things came up, I'm right there. If things came up, he's right there for me. And so there's capacity for that. I know that relationship can exist. I've gotten to a place now where, you know, with understanding my boundaries, understanding what I need for my own sanity, where like a relationship will probably never exist between me and my father. And I have gotten okay with that. It doesn't mean that I don't grieve it every single day. It doesn't mean that I don't love him. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means for me and my life and my health, I can't have that relationship. And so I think it's important to understand that two truths can exist at the same time. I can love the hell out of you, and I can hate you. Excuse my language, but I can do both of those at the same time, and they both be valid. I can want you in my life, but I can also know that your presence in my life is no good, and that's okay. And so I can love you from afar, and that's what I choose to do. I love a lot of people from afar because I'm going through this life, and my mind and my heart and all of that is intertwined with it.
And you have to move forward, man. You're grown. And I think you just have to find a way to move forward and just deal with those things the best way you can. And I think through your book, you talked about that, your relationship with your father, because I think the end of the chapters that hit me the most was the worst time of my life. I know that's just, I'm going to say that chapter.
No. It's funny you just bring that up because
that was
that's
the one
where the book started. That's where the book started. I put in my my notes in my phone. It was called The Worst Day of My Life.
The worst day of my life, yeah.
Then it changed to The Worst Month of My Life. Then it ended up being The Worst Year of My Life. And
worst year of my life.
It's the worst chapter of my life.
Yeah, that one that one hit me. That one hit me, and then the ending hit me probably the most of your book. Hit me like I'll be honest with you, I didn't want it to end. I didn't want your book to end. I think that I'm like, okay, what's going on with Reggie now? What's next? So this is one that I think you took your readers on a journey of your life, and I applaud you reading that. As we wrap this up, because I know I got to get to my next guest. I got so many questions to ask you, Reg. I'm so sorry we started late. What made you decide to do yoga as a healing? Because my sister does yoga.
Yeah.
My sister became a yoga instructor after she beat cancer. She does yoga instruction. She had, at 32 years old in 2016, she had stage 2 triple negative cancer, which is one of the most deadliest cancers out there. And the crazy part was that my mom had it at the same time my sister had it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang, I got questions for you now.
My mom was diagnosed in April of 16. And my sister was diagnosed in October. And my sister, and the crazy part is that they didn't even want to give her a mammogram because they said she was too young. And she discovered that she had a lump on her breast when she was breastfeeding her her first daughter. And she told her husband, something ain't right. Went in, got tests. We're on our family vacation in Orlando. We're at SeaWorld. My sister leaves. She comes back. They leave. They tell her, hey, yeah, you got stage 2. You need to get back to Nashville as soon as you can and start treatment immediately before it goes into stage 3. And she told us after we got back home. And me and my sister very close. And that was like they hit my world with my sister. So, and she went to YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube told the story. Now she got over 35,000 subscribers.
Wow.
Because she does healthy eating, yoga. She does all of that. So for you, how did you allow that to be a healing? Because I know you talked about that in your book. And I've seen photos on your social media of just you doing yoga, because most black guys would think, man, that's sissified or that's this or that. But
I rock them all.
Now, so
I
now
do yoga and I can rock them.
Yeah.
So hey, it's cool.
So now I'm thinking, darn, do I need to learn yoga to go through some of the things? But tell my audience that. How did you turn it into a healing moment?
For me, it came after football.
Okay.
So I played football through college, and I had nagging injuries throughout my body, knees, feet, ankles, back. And I was looking for something more passive. And so I got into some martial arts. I got into a yoga studio as well. And I remember it being way more challenging than I thought it was. Physically, it was more challenging. But then over time, I think in my first class I cried. And it wasn't because like it was challenging physically. It was because it was tapping into something that I had never tapped into. You get in positions that are vulnerable for your body to experience, especially if you've gone through any type of body trauma. You go through these experiences and it's like, oh wow, and we have a lot of trauma. One thing about trauma is it gets trapped in the body. Right, I have trauma in my neck that I'm realizing. I have trauma in my throat, right, of being voiceless for so long, of not having a voice. I have trauma in my chest and my hips, and especially hips. We hold a lot of emotions in our hips, but it started to become so much more of just a physical practice to me. Like some of the ailments of the physical body went away. Like my feet, I had plantar fasciitis in both heels. That went away. My back doesn't hurt. My knees don't hurt. And I'm like, I'm doing this for the physical. But it then became much more mental, emotional of really being able to breathe and be present with my body and understand how my body's feeling and what that means. Why do you hunch over? Well, maybe it's because you've been told not to be big and not to take up space all your life, and so you end up like this, right? But if you come from a family and they're like, be you may have a whole different posture. So like when you look at your posture, when you look at the way that things in your body hurt, it's probably attached to something emotional. And that's one of the things, going back to what you talked about your sister, our medical system for so long has not been able, it still doesn't connect the mind and the body together, right? But it's all one, right? We're all one. And so when you think about that, it's like, of course, emotions and my body will go together. And it's about just truly understanding yourself and breathing and understanding all that. And so yoga really helped me with that. And it's a practice that I will continue for the rest of my life.
Is that something you do like every day?
I breathe every day. And I, of course, we all breathe every day, but intentional breathing, mindful breathing, that deep breath that he just took was a mindful breath, hopefully. And
with Jim, I don't know, but Jim be on it, man. He be on it.
But understanding, the deepness of it all, like you're not just breathing to breathe, but breathe into different parts of your body and things like that. So I do that every day. I do yoga a couple times a week. Okay, mix it in with some other types of movement and things like that. But yeah.
Last question. I got two more questions. I want to keep you here for like 2 hours, man, because I got so many questions. When we had coffee about a month ago, you told me something that really shocked me, that just kind of like hit me and it stayed with me. And you said, I don't think I can ever be a father. Why did you tell me that?
I think it goes back to the story, to that letter.
Yeah.
To that letter that I wrote. It talks about my pains and my fears and just where I feel at in my progression of life and what it would look like to bring a child into this world. And for me, I think on a very personal level of dealing with the traumas that I experienced and not wanting to perpetuate those for the next generation, I'm like, damn, I don't want to be a terrible dad.
Yeah.
And I have gotten to a place knowing that I've done a lot of work for myself to where that wouldn't necessarily be the case. But then from a macro level, because that's part of the book too, it's like part my story, but part bigger story.
Yeah.
Right? Mass incarceration, because, okay, my dad wasn't the only one that went to prison. Let's look at these on a grand scale. Teen pregnancy, let's look at these on a grand scale and look at what's happening from a national, even international perspective. When I pull back thinking about a child from a more macro level, it's like, and I know I can't control everything, but some of the things that I can't control, I don't know if I want to bring somebody into that. And having the awareness and knowledge of the world as it is, it's a fear. And I work through that fear, and I understand you can't live your life in fear. But the difference between trauma and where I'm at now is choice. And I have the choice of whether or not I have a child. And right now it's looking at the ills of the world versus the goods. And I would prefer not to bring somebody into the ills.
Well, if I could do it all over, I probably would think the same thing, because the world is so cruel. And I, that's something I when you said that in the book, I was like, man, if I could do it all over, I probably wouldn't have. I've enjoyed having two boys. It's the best part of my life. But now the worry of me is like, when they get grown and they go on their own, who's going to protect them? I believe in God and higher power, but life still happens, and can I protect my boys the best way I can? So, tell my audience why they need to I can tell them why they need to buy your book.
Yeah.
But I want you to tell my audience why they need to buy your book and read your book.
I would say buy it, listen to it, because it'll really change your perspective on life. Whether you have a experience that is similar to mine and you understand what it's like to be a poor kid from the hood who has to navigate life and understand the hardship that is, it's going to give you inspiration and understanding that there is a way out of that. There is a healthy way out of that, to where you don't have to turn to some of the ills and the negative things that hold us back. And then I would say, if you're somebody who is listening to this, or who you cannot relate at all, is going to give you a window into a world of so many people's lives that you commingle with, that you interact with on a daily basis, and to help you understand how to talk with them, how to empathize with their stories and their lives, so that you can get the full potential out of them. And I think it is, like you said, it opened your eyes to mental health in a totally different way. I think in my efforts of destigmatizing mental health, so that we all get the treatment that we deserve and that we need, it's going to open your eyes to those things.
Well, I know one, thank you for your time. I'm telling you guys, go get this book. This is a life-changing book that has changed my life. I'm doing the Audible again.
Yeah.
Because I like hearing how you navigate the stories. And it was very moving from your childhood all the way through now. I say it's one of the best ones.
Wow.
One of the best ones that moved me. Even if I didn't know you, it moved me so much where I told Jim, I felt like I was in the movie theater eating popcorn.
Yeah.
I like, you turn this to a movie, you got one supporter gonna go see it.
Appreciate that. Yes.
Because I think that you remind me a lot of Antoine Fisher, the Antoine Fisher story, from those childhood traumas that turn out to be successful. And Reggie, you the man. I applaud you.
I appreciate
as a man. Man to man, I applaud you. Your book is great. I see why you are speaking everywhere.
Yeah, I appreciate
I see now why you're speaking. And I hope I can get blessed to be at that level one day where I can go out speaking.
You will.
But I'm gonna take Reggie with me.
I want to say, I want you on my podcast because you talked about not wanting to be vulnerable as a man, and my podcast is all about that.
Whenever you call me, I'm coming.
It's all about that. It's about redefining vulnerability as a strength, because vulnerability is a strength, and this conversation has been so blessing to me. So I appreciate you.
Whenever you call me, Reggie, I'm gonna put whatever on my calendar down to say, hey, I want to be on your podcast. I've never done a podcast where I was vulnerable to people.
Well, we're gonna change that.
So when you asked me about relationships, that's the only area of my life that I feel like I struggle with is the love area. I struggle with that, and I told God, I'd rather you take me before you take Toya, because the next woman gonna catch it. I wouldn't be good to nobody else. I wouldn't.
You will.
It'd be hard because here's the thing. First argument, I'm like, I don't feel like doing this crap. God, I'm 47. Say I was single. Anybody that's in their 30s or 40s and deal with some stuff that you're gonna have to deal with them, and I don't want to do that. I'd rather you just go live your life. If you got problems, tough luck. Let me just raise my kids. I take you on a casual dinner, have a great night. That's it. I'm out.
Well,
because I don't hear, my baby daddy. I don't hear none of that stuff, man.
Yeah.
So that's I'm at a place. I'm at a place now where I'm trying to love my wife better. I'm trying to be a better person where she feels loved, because I just like working and grinding, and I'm gonna work to provide you a better life. But I know there's areas in my life that I know I need to fix and change. So, Reggie, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. Your book has moved my life. And I'm thankful to God that you wrote that, because I would have never looked at PTSD any kind of way. And how you did your Audible book, amazing.
Thank you.
That's why I text you and I put excellent.
Yeah.
I was probably halfway through it when I sent you that text. So thanks for coming. Where can they find your book and your information as we close out?
Yes, Reggie D Ford on Instagram, LinkedIn, on all platforms. Website is ReggieDFord.com, and then you can buy the book on Amazon, wherever you get books. You can support the local bookstore. They can order it for you as well. So Perseverance Through Severe Dysfunction by Reggie D Ford. That's where you can find me.
Well, y'all go buy it.
Then check out Vulnerability Muscle when you're not listening to Stronger Than My Father podcast.
No, you got. I've listened to 2 of them. I really enjoyed your podcast. I applaud you as a man, and thank God that you're doing the things that you're doing to change lives.
Thank you.
You're doing so. Let's roll, man.
Thank you.
I have to thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Stronger Than My Father podcast. If you like what you hear, please click the subscribe button on YouTube. Help me reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. Also, if you like what you hear, we need your donations of $25 or more so we can keep this podcast on the air. I need your support. Just go to my website at strongermyfather.org/donate and help us continue to help fight and restore fatherhood. Hey, I'm Marcus Benice, Stronger My Father, your most trusted podcast that's centered around restoring fatherhood. God bless you. See you in another episode.